There are two cards in the game that will build off of the duplicates, and we say duplicates loosely because there are no duplicates in Doom Links. Even the cards that are similar to each other have little subtle details in them that make them unique in their own way.
Maybe it's a difference in the art.
The first one is Swarm. So Swarm's value is equal to the number of swarms on the table. So if I have a swarm and Chris has a swarm, each swarm is worth 2.
So we both have 2 points.
If I have a swarm and Chris has 2 swarms, there are 3 swarms on the whole table. Each swarm is worth 3 points.
So he's got 3 and I've got 6 points.
It's kind of like an arms race. Then, very similar to Swarm, but not the same effect, are the kidneys. And the kidneys are effectively each valued at the number of kidneys you have on your trait pile.
Your trait pile,
so
locally.
I have 1 kidney and Chris has 2 kidneys. My kidney is only worth 1 point. Each of Chris's 2 kidneys are each worth 2 points for a total.
So let's talk about the gene pool card. This is your gene pool. It's very important while you're playing, in our opinion, to build up that gene pool early on with cards that have a gene pool effect on them, such as Just, which boosts your gene pool by 1. This is important because as you play, catastrophes will naturally decrease your gene pool number. And when your gene pool decreases, the number of cards in your hand decreases. That's less options to play with. Generally, having more cards in your hand is better. Having more options is better.
However, if you were to have a card that would increase your gene pool and you were considering playing it later in the game, it might not be as valuable to your strategy because you don't have as many rounds left. And so you may want to play a different card that might have slightly more points at the end of the game, just because you're not going to have very many more rounds to take advantage of the extra card you're going to draw.
It really depends. If you have a card like Camouflage where you benefit from having a high gene pool, or any cards like that, it does make sense. The additional gene pool effects on these cards, they typically tend to have like a lower face value, just because you are benefiting from boosting your gene pool up. So it just really depends on what's in your trait pile.
On the note of the gene pool, just a reminder, you stabilize at the end of your turn.
End of your turn.
Always. So if you're gonna draw, if you're gonna discard, you're gonna get to that gene pool number, whatever number is at the top of your card, you're gonna wanna do that at the end of your turn. Talking to you, Dad.
The only other time that you will stabilize if it is not your turn is if a card tells you to stabilize.
Right.
After you turn your 3rd catastrophe in the game, that means the game is over.
Done.
So what you'll do once you turn that 3rd and final catastrophe is you will follow the gene pool effect right there.
That's it.
And the catastrophic effects. So you'll follow those 2 just the same as you would for the first 2 catastrophes. After that, you will then go around the table in turn order, and everybody is going to check the traits in their trait pile for this little World's End symbol. So not the drop of life that you see there, that little teardrop logo, this little heart symbol is the...
Right there.
Yeah, which my finger is covering, but that is the World's End effect symbol. Check for that symbol in turn order and apply those effects. Once you finish going around, then jump back to the catastrophe and apply that World's End effect. And then the game is over and you can tally up your points.
However, there are ways to play with variants, and we list several of them in the rule book.
Yes.
My family, for instance, we only jump right to this yellow text. We just play the World's End effect because it makes it a cleaner, quicker ending. However, we do recommend you play all of it, the entire card.
That's the standard way to do it. As Eric mentioned, there are a lot of other variations that you can introduce in the game. Those are all in the rule book. We went over some of them in our rule book video, which you can check out on our YouTube page.